Malacca is a town steeped in a rich history. Formerly a trading center in the region, it was a coveted prize fought for by the European colonial powers. Today, Malacca is a laid-back port town where you can experience Malaysia at a slower pace. Malacca has always been the historical focal point for Malaysia. In many ways, its history is Malaysia's history. It was here in Malacca in 1396 that Malaysia was started by Parameswara, an exiled prince of Sumatra. Legend has it that Parameswara's son, Iskandar Shah, was out hunting near the site of the future city and was amazed to see a mouse deer turn on his pack of hunting dogs, scattering them. Taking this as a good sign, he returned to ask his father to found a city there. He named the settlement Malacca, after the Malacca tree he had been sitting under. It was not long before the city caught the attention of other nations. The Chinese presence in Malaysia first started here in Malacca as early as the 15th century with the arrival of this man, Admiral Cheng Ho. Known as the Three-Jeweled Eunuch Prince, Admiral Cheng Ho came to Malacca as an ambassador from the Ming Emperor, promising protection from his Siamese enemies. With this contact, Chinese settlers soon made their way to Malaysia, intermarried and assimilated some of the Malayan culture. These original settlers and their descendants are known as the Baba and the Nonya, or the Straits Chinese. Malacca was a thriving port town built on an enormous trade between the east and the west. In 1511, the Portuguese conquered Malacca, overthrowing the local Sultan, thus sparking an era of colonization that would not end for another 400 years. The Portuguese were expanding their empire into Asia, and led by Alfonso de Albuquerque, they took the town and forced the Sultan to flee to Johor. The remains of the Portuguese presence is here in the gate of the Formosa fortress. The original fortress was constructed using slave labor and had walls 3 meters thick, with its highest point towering 40 meters over the city. The Portuguese also brought Christianity with their rule. Missionaries like St. Francis Xavier once tried to sway souls here at St. Paul's Church, known then as Our Lady of the Hill. The Portuguese administration lasted here for 130 years. In 1641, after a fierce and bloody battle, the Dutch took over Malacca from the Portuguese, and so began their 150-year rule of this area. The Dutch have made the most lasting architectural impression on Malacca. Here in the center of the old city is the Stadtroos. These bright red buildings were the administrative offices and governor's residence during the 17th century. The new colonizers of the Dutch East India Company constructed several public buildings and tied the city into their Indonesian possessions. But once again, events in Europe would affect Malacca. Due to a conflict amongst the colonial powers of Europe in the 18th century, the Dutch peacefully ceded the port city of Malacca to the British in 1795. Here in the graveyard at Bukit St. Paul still lie some of the original British colonists. The English determined that if Malacca was ever to be returned to Holland, that it be no threat to its own colonies in Penang and Singapore. So it began the systematic destruction of Formosa fortress and was barely stopped from relocating the entire population of Malacca to Penang. The damage had been done, however, and Malacca began its slide back off the world stage. The next time Malacca changed hands, it was to the Japanese in 1942. This memorial on Bukit China, or China Hill, is a monument to the Chinese victims of the exceedingly brutal Japanese occupation. In 1956, Malacca was once again free from the yoke of colonial oppression when Malaya was granted independence by the British Empire. Finally, under local rule once again, Malacca still wears its layers of history well. The colonial buildings sit alongside the twisting streets of Chinatown. It's a fascinating mix of cultures and religions, a perfect reflection of Malaysia itself.